Hello, we are Card Game 29. My name is Jason.
I'm Christian.
I'm Rocco.
And we have decided to develop the card game President on MATLAB. Now we're going to do a game demonstration. To play an online game, all you're going to do is both players are going to press the join game button. It's important that whenever you're starting a new session that you press the reset lobby button, and this will make sure that everything's initialized for your next play session. Here I have number of players. It's going to be just 2 of us for today, and then I will be player 1. On Chris's screen, he will leave it as 2. So I will confirm, and at this point I have loaded into the game. Now Chris can confirm as well. Everything stays the same except for the player number, and now he's loaded in as well. At this point in time, now we can begin to play the game. The goal of President is to get rid of all your cards. So what you see in front of us are 2 decks. You see one on the bottom, one on the side. You get rid of these cards through playing them in sets of 1s, 2s, 3s, or 4s. So I'm going to start by pressing 2 4s, and I successfully send those cards.
On my screen now I have the option to play cards or skip my turn, and it'll go over back to Jason's turn. But I'm going to instead play 2 cards to challenge him, and I played 2 cards, and now I get a successful move, and it's going to go over to him.
Now we're back over here. We can see that now I have Chris's 2 cards, and I'm able to also skip turn or play turn. You'll also notice that whenever I select cards, if it works, I'll have a successful move window. If I select like 2 cards that are not matching, so like 10 and 7, and I try to play them, it will not let me play that. And if I check the command window, I can actually see more specifically what happened. But I'm going to play 2 10s, and that was a successful move. Now we'll just play back and forth for a little bit. Now at this point in the game, I have 1 card left, and I'm now going to play that card. And after doing so, I've won, and I get a player screen to congratulate me with that. And then when I'm done, I just head back to home, and the whole process starts over.
Okay, so now we're going to demonstrate the local multiplayer functionality. As you'll see, it's going to be the exact same as online, except now everything's going to be controlled with 1 mouse and 1 keyboard. So briefly, we'll also show the rules button here. So if you click this, we get a nice little synopsis of the game rules. So that's helpful. And then you can just click exit rules, and then there you go, rules. So we can go ahead and get started. We're going to click the play button this time. This is how we start local multiplayer, and we'll demonstrate our 4-player functionality. So as you can see, it's the same exact UI as before, except now we have a player along the bottom, the side, the top, and the other sides. And there you go, same exact process as our online multiplayer, except it works local, all players controlled by 1 keyboard and mouse.
Now we're going to take a look at the game code here. Starting with some properties, we made use of class properties in order to keep variables consistent across the whole function.
The first function that we have here is image array. Basically all it's doing is adding the card number and then adding .png to it as a string, just so that it can actually call upon the image of the card. So the next function we have is update button icons. So this function is basically to update all of the button icons instantly, instead of having to go in and manually update which icons is being set to what button. The next function we have is update button visible. And basically what it's doing is essentially doing the same thing for the previous function, but instead it's setting them to either on or off the visibility. So once a card is played, this function is being called upon to essentially hide them.
The function check state button states basically takes an index of all the buttons that have been pushed down, and then uses that to figure out which cards have been pressed.
The first function here is the check player turn. This is basically just using the mod function to continuously check based off increasing turn count which player's turn it is. From there, we also have an increase player turn function. This is basically just continuously increasing the player's turn as the turn count increases.
Here we have player turn lock. Basically, we're checking what the current online turn is and then comparing that to what's on the computer and what the player ID is. If it's not the same, we lock them in a loop, and we're continuously sampling ThingSpeak until we have a matching value, so we know it's their turn. To operate ThingSpeak, we've generalized all write commands into one single function, and every time that we call this function, all the values are being updated. Reading it out is a little bit more complicated, but basically we're taking that data out in the form of a table, then we're decoding it and converting it back to its base value. When it comes to cards, something that we're doing a lot of is we're sending over a 1 by 52 array of these cards, and we need a way to decode that into the player decks. And the way we do that is by dividing that by the number of players. So you'll get the number of rows equal to the number of players, and that's what this is basically doing.
So our next three functions are just for our sound. We have background, card sound, and victory sound. Now we're in the startup function. So now once the game is actually running, basically we turn a lot of the UI elements to off by doing visible equals off. We have our animation elements.
Yeah, we basically just did the same thing for the animation elements as any other UI element, just we had an image component and we just imported GIFs into those image components, and at the start of the game they are also toggled to have their visibility off, and at the win state part of the game they are toggled on to start the animations.
So right here it's playing the lobby music, and then after you play something it will it'll stop. You're no longer in the lobby. Now the callback for the play button push essentially just going to set the how many players field to on, and it's going to set the confirm button to on.
When the reset button is pressed, we're updating all the default values to their default, and then updating that to ThinkSpeak. When the confirm button is pressed, we first categorize, is it online, using the variable that was set earlier. If it does happen online, we're checking if the lobby is open. If the lobby is not open, we're generating a deck and then sending that out. If it is already open, then we're grabbing the deck and we're decoding that. The local version does basically the same thing, except we're just checking to make sure that the number of players works. After that, we're just updating the screens to go back to the player screens with all the cards, and we show the number of cards representative to the number of players. At the end of that, if the app is happening online, we're going to check the player turn, and then we're going to turn on the player turn lock. Something important about the way this code runs is that we're only ever running game logic when the play cards button is pushed. So the player can press as many cards as they want, nothing's going to happen until they press play cards. What we're doing first is we're checking like what are the cards, then we're using the button states to figure out what the selected cards are, then saying, okay, how long is that, what are their values, what about what's played already, what are their values, and then we run it through a series of gates. Is it empty? They gotta select a card. But if they selected more than one card, we need to check that those cards are the same. If they chose like a set of cards, but it doesn't match the previous set, so like for example, player 1 played 1 card, but player 2 is trying to play 2 cards, it will also stop you there.
So here we have some of our game logic for a successful turn. Basically, to start off, after a successful turn is assessed and it's good, we have just a few UI toggling, some the success display, the success message, which is where it shows a move with the text successful move, various UI elements here. We then kill cards from the deck, which basically means that cards is played, it's eliminated from the deck, so whatever number it was in the array is set to 0. After that, the corresponding button is eliminated, and so the card disappears from the player's hand after it's played. From here, we check the win state. So to check if a player is 1, they check if the sum of that array is equal to 0. And if the sum is equal to 0, they know that the player is 1. If the player is 1, various UI elements will be toggled. A lot of buttons will turn off. We'll play the victory sound, and all of the animation at the end for the congrats message is turned on.
Last thing that's happening here is a skip player turn. So this is basically the way that we progress rounds and get players to actually win. So there is actually no code checking whether or not the card played is the highest possible value card. We're just saying, oh, you cannot play cards, so your only option is to skip. And the skip, what it does is it first checks online if what the skip count is, updates that to local. Then it increases that. If the skip count is equal to the number of players minus 1, then that means that the player who played that card that's been skipped by the other players has won the round. Winning the round doesn't give you any points, but it lets you start the next round. This then is updated throughout the ThinkSpeak and the game messaging window, so that way everyone's aware, okay, player 1 has won the round, now it's player 1's turn again. Last couple of things, we have a home push button. This is after the game is won. Simply just go back to home so you don't have to restart the game. And we have, just make sure when it closes, we're closing the app down and all the sound gets turned off. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed.
That's it, yeah.
Thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed.
Thanks. Have a good one.